My finger up there, it was gone. Hold on a second, let me get here. How's it going, Kate?
Hi, it's going okay. How are you?
I'm not too bad. You said you've been struggling with agoraphobia for a while, huh?
Yeah, for it'll be 15 years this year.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let me tell you my story, and then if you want to tell me your story, I would love to hear it. Does that sound good?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes.
That way, you kind of hear my stages I went through, like I was talking about.
Okay.
So, I've always had God in my heart. From the time I was 15, 16 years old, He was really in my heart, learning about His gift. And I never steered from God in a certain way as far as, you know, not believing in Him or whatever else, you know what I mean? But I got to a point where I stopped attending church, things like that, and I was still helping people doing things, but uh, God just kind of stopped me in my tracks because He got more about how I wanted to do it and how I wanted, instead of giving it to Him. And so He stopped me in my tracks one night, and this is how I became an agoraphobe. Uh, I was on my way home from work one night, and it was pitch black. Car coming the other way on a back road had their brights on, and I couldn't see a thing, And so I hold on to the wheel, just trying to hold for it to go down. The speed limit was like 55 miles an hour. Well, as soon as the lights disappeared, I saw something in the road, but I mean, it was so close, I had no time to stop. And so, of course, I ran it over. It was so quick. I prayed and was like, "Please, Lord, do not let it be what I thought it was." You know. And I get out of my car and I walk to the back of my car and I see the young man laying there. Apparently, earlier that night, this young man, at the age of 18 years old, had decided that his life had gotten so bad for whatever reason, whether it been being bullied at school because he was a senior in school still, whether it been the substances that he was on, so many different things, dressed all in black, found a spot that he knew was a perfect spot where nobody would be able to see him. And he laid in the road and waited. And it just happened to be me that came by. And of course, it wasn't my fault, nothing I could do. After they did their investigation that night, I even went on home. When I got home, as you can imagine, after going something to do there, I won't go through the whole experience of what I experienced that night. But when I got home, the next 3 days, all I did was lay in bed and cry. And then because I'm married, I've been married now going on, 23 years now. Uh, my wife doesn't drive, and so I still had to drive her back and forth to work. And we had people living with us we were trying to help out. So the guy that was living there, he didn't have a car at the time, so he didn't mind helping. But 3 days later, he got a car, and I had to start driving my wife again, so I had to get out of bed. But when I got in my car and I sat down, that's where I stayed for 6 months. I didn't. The only time I got out of my car was to go inside to go to the bathroom or shower or whatever and change my clothes. I sat in my car, I ate in my car, I slept in my car, I watched YouTube, Netflix, whatever on my car, just anything that could pass the time. And I just wanted nothing to do with anybody because I wanted to help people. But now, in my mind, right off the bat, that stemmed into so much more was the thought that whenever I went out in public now, instead of people saying, "Hey, there's Scott, dude, he's got a million jokes, he'll make you laugh, he's a good guy, yada yada," whatever they say, even if it's, "Dude, that guy right there, he's a lazy son of a," I'd rather them say that than the fact that now when I went out in public, no matter where I went, I felt that people looked at me and thought, "There's the guy that killed that kid." I never wanted that. Of course, who would? And so I just retreated. How could I do that? If something, and I knew it wasn't my fault. But that night just ran over my mind over and over and over and over again. I barely slept, nightmares and stuff. And like I said, my wife worked, and eventually I ended up in the hospital. I just sit in my car for 6 months. And when I got out of the hospital at that point, my back was already messed up, and I was already walking with a cane, and I had problems with my legs. But now at this point here, I was on a breathing machine. I was having to be on oxygen if I left my house. It hurt going even 5 feet from where I was going. I just had gave up on life. And I told my wife, I said, we can't stay here anymore. I can't help out these people anymore. I can't be in the house with them. I can't sit in the car, And so we moved in the house, luckily. And this is where I know God was really looking after me. He found us a place right across the street from my wife's job. And I had to do no driving at all. And we had nobody else living with us. And so I became a goer from soon as we got moved in and I moved into that house. The door was shut. And for 3 years, that's where I stayed. I didn't walk out of my house because besides hearing things already and seeing things, because when I was starting to drive, and this is why I was asleep. My wife worked overnight and I would just sleep in the parking lot at her job because I would see things in the road that I know weren't there. Bodies, shadows, dark spots, wet spots, whatever it been. I had a 10-minute drive, took me 2 hours because I had to pull over the road so many times. And so not having to drive was great, but there still was hearing voices, phone calls, the things that was happening that I never thought I got, and then more got into my head, and the devil really worked so hard. I feel like a demon somewhat came inside me, if you will, because I started thinking so many dark things about why God. I never turned from God, but I was like, why? Why me? I've been good all this time. I've done all this stuff for you. I've been helping so many people at the sake of my own being, not expecting anything in return. Why me? And God looked at me and says, why not you? And I sat there for 3 years. And for the first, 3 months, I had almost 3,000 movies. So I just kept putting them in different order, by alphabetical order, by the year they were made, things like that. I kept myself busy. I didn't watch TV. I didn't do nothing. If I did watch TV, it was just a movie I had on the shelf if I just was feeling really lazy, you know what I mean? But I was trying to stay energetic because I didn't want to just be lazy. I wanted to get off that oxygen. I was still afraid to get outside. And one day, a lot of it because it's not that so much the world had changed so much too, because as soon as I started watching the news again, I'm 47 years old. When I first got on TikTok 3 years ago, was the very first time I ever had anybody ask me what my pronouns were. What? Of course I'm 40. I don't remember. It's been a long time. I think my nouns are probably amateurs at this point anyway. Ask me what my adjectives are. I don't know. And I didn't know how to interact with this new society we have going on that just seemed like sprung up really hard overnight. It seems like it's getting worse and worse. And so being a godly person, everything else, and doing that, it kept me inside. And because I knew if I went out there and started helping, and of course, with all these different thoughts I had in my head, because I was thinking somebody was going to be outside waiting to end my life, or people would look at me and they would treat my wife differently, or this would happen. And if you can imagine how many different thoughts might go through someone's head. And so, like I said, one day I was watching these reels on Facebook, and it ended up being over TikTok videos, and if you wanted to watch a lot of them, you had to download TikTok, so I did. Then I wasn't getting on here originally for any kind of content or anything like that. And so, but I did. I got on there, and I thought, that is kind of fun to make some of these videos. And so I did. I made a couple, and I tell you what, that just I did a couple of those lip syncing ones, I think I might have done a couple where I was telling some dumb jokes, and I got a few likes and whatever, and it was like, oh wow, people liked what I did, It gave me some confidence. So I made some more, and I did some others, and did some others. For I know it, I've done all these lip sync videos and duets with people, and learned how to switch filters and things, and I was just having so much fun. And then before you know it, I was able to go live. And so I was like, well, live? I didn't even really know what live was, because at that time, you had to have 1,000 followers to go live. And so I went live. And I built confidence up enough in myself by making those videos, because I got to a point where I loved watching myself anyway. You know what I mean? I'm still my own biggest thing. I ain't going to lie about it. It's not being arrogant. It's not being narcissistic or anything. I'm just my own biggest thing. I love it. I got faults. I ain't perfect by no means. And I know how to laugh at myself. But I think it's important to be your own biggest fan, Besides God. God's definitely your biggest fan. But I started going through and checking out these lives and seeing what they were about. And back then, I noticed there was a lot of people that were telling, and this is like 3 years ago, it was totally different than it is now. There's a lot of people just trying to connect with other people, just trying to tell their story. I had met three guys. I met 3 guys on here that had lost their wives within 6 months of me meeting them. The first guy, it devastated him so much that he was living in a tent in the woods. But he had a cell phone. He was still paying that. He had some way to take care of that. So it told me and showed me again that people still have this need to want connection. You know what I mean? And so the second guy, he was going live, sitting in his car. He had a house, like I did, he only went in there when it was time to go to bed, or he had to do things like I did. A lot of times he just sat in his car. He did a lot of Uber. He did a lot of Uber Eats or whatever it was that he did, because it kept him busy, and he just couldn't bring himself to be in the house where his wife and him had spent so many long years, So I got that. Especially being married myself now for 23 years. And the third guy, he went live every occasionally, but a lot of times he just went through and encouraging other people. And he sat in my live one day listening to me while I was trying to tell my testimony. And I went over and I checked out his videos and stuff, I wanted to check out, say thank you, Found out that he had lost his wife, but he had this special needs son that took his time. And him and his son would make these videos sometimes together, man, and they found a way to still enjoy life, even with the loss. And they believed in God, and they lived in God, and they trusted God, and they were like, it's because I know that I'll see her again one day. I was like, wow. I mean, that wasn't quite my case as far as the one who kept me in the house, but I was well that these guys were doing that. And so it encouraged me. I started telling my testimony more. And, I didn't get a big crowd sometimes. I'd only get maybe 1 or 2 people, sometimes just one person that would sit there the whole time. And they'd listen to me just talk about whatever. And a lot of times it was about that night and what I'd experienced. And then thinking about why we treat each other the way we treat each other. And just got some more questions and stuff like that. And then I got all these people that I had gone from having felt like nobody in my life that believed in me. Even though I know they probably wouldn't all stay there, and I found that out. That I had went from having my wife and my mom, my brother, being pretty much the only ones that I thought could believe in me. As I got on here and started getting friends, people listening to me and encouraging me. And we started making the Boppers Crew group and stuff, I had gone from having just a couple of friends on here to over 100 people underneath the STC Bopper family between me and my buddy Zen. and a bunch of them on the Boppers crew, because that just started out with me and my voices. But they had started encouraging me, and one day, I said, you know what? With this encouragement, I said, I'm not going to stay a prisoner in my house anymore. I said, I'm not going to do it. And so one day, and you can see it, I have a clip of it. Well, I need to get the longer clip from Fun Socks, but there's a part where I just came inside. It's on my YouTube. Anyway, where I just came back inside because I had gone outside my door and I hollered, I am not going to stay a prisoner in my home. And I did it on live, man. And it was a scary experience. And I look over at this, my buddy Fun Socks, it was his live, and he's like, dude, I'm so proud of you. Because I know what that meant to you and stuff, man. They just encouraged me. And I was like, man, I can do this. People believe in me. And if they believe in me, I know, because I don't want to stay just in the computer world. It feels great. But if I stay here, the devil wins. Because this is a great thing to connect to us and get encouragement. But if we stay here, then the devil wins. And
Yo, what is good, my guy? How are you doing?
sorry about that. What? I'm sorry. My phone
I said,
fell.
how are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Why was that? Why do you ask?
I'm just curious how you're doing, my brother. I was curious if I could sing a song for you. I've been working on it, and I think you might like it.
Can we do this later? I'm kind of in the middle of a story. We're kind of in the middle of a conversation right here, right now.
I
If you don't mind.
apologize, my brother.
Not a
In the
problem.
name of Jeffrey Epstein, God bless.
In the name of Jeffrey Epstein. I never heard that before in my life. What the heck was that?
He's just being different. It's okay.
I've never heard that before.
Very
Man,
weird on him.
the world really has changed. Anyways,
It's very weird.